today's offline webinar, Smarter Duty Planning and Tariff Concessions Orders Insights for 2026, presented by Nexus Point. My name is Sam Sakasiris and I'm the National Membership Team Leader here at Optimise, and I will be your host today. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge that I'm hosting this webinar from the lands of the Whadjuk Noongar people. I also acknowledge the traditional custodians of the various lands on which we all work today, and the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people that may be attending this webinar. I'm joined today by two presenters. One is Boaz Shiponi, Managing Partner for Nexus Point. He's the founding and managing partner, a registered tax agent, licensed customs broker, and non-executive director. He specialises in international supply chain strategy, customs compliance, and trade regulation, helping businesses optimise trade operations and reduce costs. And secondly, we have Trilby Langdon, Business Development Manager for Nexus Point. Trilby builds a strong relationship with clients, helping them find practical solutions that deliver lasting value. With experience across government, education, tourism and media, she brings a clear, grounded approach to communication and client engagement. With global trade conditions shifting and cost pressures continuing to rise, ensuring you are not overpaying on imported goods is crucial. This webinar gives Optimise members a clear, practical look at how independent duty reviews and tariff concession orders, or TCOs, can uncover savings and strengthen duty planning for 2026. Drawing on the same specialist customs expertise we use to help businesses simplify compliance and reduce costs. Nexus Point will break down how an independent duty review can reveal missed savings, incorrect classifications, and opportunities to optimise duty exposure. This includes identifying where duties have been overpaid in the past and how businesses can reclaim refunds, an area where many organisations unintentionally leave money on the table. Strong customs oversight has been shown to reduce landed cost volatility, improve compliance certainty, and enhance supply chain efficiency. You will also gain practical insight into future duty planning and how TCOs can remove duties on qualifying goods and machinery, streamline procurement processes, and expand competitive advantage supported by government compliance requirements, and guidance on how to manage the application process effectively. Optimise members will leave with clear, actionable options to minimise compliance risk, improve financial outcomes, and plan smarter for 2026 and beyond. As we would like this to be an interactive discussion, please submit your questions as we go. At the end of the presentation, our two presenters will respond accordingly. This is a great opportunity to receive expert insights on the topic covered. There is a Q&A button at the bottom of your screen to send through your questions at any time. You can also upvote on other audience questions that you most want answered. We will endeavour to get to as many questions as we can in the time that we have remaining at the end. We are recording this webinar and we'll make it available to all attendees with a link to the Optimise YouTube channel in the coming days. So with all that said, I'd like to now hand over to Boaz and Trilby to commence the discussion.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for the introduction, Sam, and thanks to the Optimise team for hosting us today. So just to start off, welcome, of course, to all Optimise members, those that are on live today and those that have registered and that may be listening to this recording at another time. So I'm Trilby Langdon. On behalf of Boaz and myself, I'd like to welcome all of Optimise members. I do just want to mention that we have created a QR code that you'll see on the slide here and will be dotted throughout our presentation. That actually leads through to the Optimise member benefit page for Nexus Point. So if at any time you want to go through to the website, it'll have our details and all of the details that we're talking about today. We really appreciate your time and we hope you get real benefit from what we're about to present to you today. We will be starting off going through a market update and we'll talk about a high-level duty review, and then we'll dive a little bit deeper into Tariff Concession Orders, or TCOs, and then talk about members' offers, and then, as Sam said, through to questions at the end. So Nexus Point has been in operation for over 20 years, and we offer very specialised solutions, and we partner very closely with our clients. Now, before we do get into the details about how an independent freight tender can really benefit your business, let's talk about the state of play and the conditions that are in the market right now. So over to you, Boaz. He's going to give us an update on what's happening in the market right now.
Yeah. So just quickly, this is from shipping point of view, which is the broader picture and what's happening at the moment. Um, as you're aware, since COVID, we had a bit of disruption in the shipping industry, and it's work a bit like the butterfly effect or the domino effect, when one thing in one side of the world influence trade in the other side of the world. So it could be weather events, it could be industrial action in different ports around the world, and we are not short of that in Australia as well. Infrastructure constraints, and obviously tariff and trade wars that we experience at the moment. And each one of those components influence the international trade in different ways. If we're talking about infrastructure, reduce importation from China, the trade between China and the US, increase the load on trading between India and Vietnam to the US and other countries. We see freight rates at the moment from the US around the 1650 from the West Coast and 2300 from the East Coast per 40-footer container. Lucky enough, and again, because there is a bit of oversupply now in trade, peak season surcharge has dropped. So all the charges we had through the Christmas busy period had dropped, and prices start coming down. We see also shipping line profitability dropping quite significantly, and it's a good time of the year now, and good timing for companies that import to strike a deal with the shipping line. This is Maersk, the second biggest shipping line in the world, profit and loss. They were, let's say, cruising around $3 billion US dollar a year profit. During COVID years, it went up to $30 billion, and now it started coming down. With the introduction of the tariff war between China and the US, this is the first year in many, many years that Maersk is going to go into a loss. So we see prices declining. There is overcapacity. Prices in Europe at the moment, if you import to Australia from Europe, it's average 1,800 US dollars, much cheaper from Hamburg, more expensive from the UK, and India is quite stable at $1,800 per 40-foot container.
Great, thanks so much for the update, Boaz. So let's get into independent duty reviews. So if you're an Australian importer and you haven't undertaken an independent duty review, there's a strong chance that you might be paying more duty than necessary. We find that many importers assume their freight forwarders has duty planning covered, but actually the responsibility ultimately lies with you. So that's where an independent review comes in. It helps you check the checkers, so to speak, and it gives you a strategic opportunity to recover lost value and strengthen the performance of your import operations. So it's about taking control and getting that clarity. Now, these small duty slips don't appear all at once. They slowly chip away at margins, and they do make it harder to see the true picture of your landing costs. So at Nexus Point, we work with Australian importers who are discovering that even with strong internal processes, there are unnecessary duties actually slipping through. And in some cases, it happens on goods that shouldn't have even attracted duty at all. Now, we've identified savings for 97% of businesses that we review, and we also work with, that includes some major retailers we work with like Kmart, Bunnings and Coles. Now, a duty review is not about questioning your capacity. It's actually about strengthening it. It highlights discrepancies, confirms whether your TCOs, your Tariff Concession Orders, are being applied correctly, and it gives you clarity and confidence in your import operations.
So many importers are under the assumption that if they import from free trade agreement, they will not pay duty, or if they have existing TCO that they utilize from time to time, they won't pay duty. And the truth is, when goods come into Australia, sometimes they do pay duty, and for many reasons, not only because the customs broker make mistakes, and it does happen. Also, in cases that you as an importer didn't have the right documentation on hand, or you didn't provide sufficient information to the custom broker. TCO wording are very, very specific, and you need to be very careful when applying them. And there is a very strong compliance program with customs at the moment. So if you're utilizing TCO when you shouldn't, you might be impose penalties or infringement notices and so on. So you need to be very careful when you're utilizing those FTA, free trade agreement, and TCO, and make sure you applying the right duty. And we come after the event and look at the duty that was paid. But if we look at the high-level duty review program of Nexus Point, we'll look at three different areas, or we look at the past, and that's the import file audit, when we look for overpayment of duties for the last 4 years and try to recover overpayment of duty. We also looking for some company at compliance review, and this is looking at the present. And some companies need for the internal audit to be audited. It's not a popular product. Not a lot of companies like to be audited, but some of our clients request us to do that. And then there is the future. When you plan, there is the duty planning, looking into the future, and apply for tariff concession order, for example. And there are a few other tools like TradeX that I'll cover very lightly, but we'll talk about tariff concession order in a bit in length later on.
Right, so let's have a look at the methodology and the process of what we do with an import file audit. So customs duties, as Boaz has previously mentioned, can be independently reviewed every 4 years. So there's more than 18,000 different customs categories, and as we said, errors can be made, and even a well-managed import program can miss some of those opportunities to reduce duty. So an independent review combines hindsight and current knowledge to correct past misclassifications and reclaim overpaid duty through refunds. So Australia's import framework is really detailed and constantly evolving. So even well-established import operations can be tripped up by any out-of-date tariff concession orders, which will say the shortcut of TCOs, as well as product misclassifications or supplier documentations that doesn't quite meet the recommendations. So we access your import files over the last 4 years with your authorization. To do that, we get a template with an authorization letter from you, and then we submit that to the Australian Border Force to access your data. We get that data back from the Australian Border Force between 2 and 4 weeks, and then we do our analysis from there. So your participation is really confidential and secure. There's no disruption to your operations, and we don't need to access to your systems. We present our findings once we've done our analysis and our recommendations, and we include any potential recovery amounts and suggested next steps for the full audit if appropriate. So the next step is very much about providing the authorization letter to the Australian Border Force. We will do our analysis and handle the rest before we present back to you. It's important to note that there is no obligation to proceed past the high-level review. We will actually talk about that in our presentation meeting, whether or not you want to actually proceed or not.
So,
over to you.
So the stage that Trilby spoke about is the first stage, which we decide together, you and us, if it's a go, no go, if it's worth to look at the last 4 years and try and recover some duty. And this is, again, we're talking about the past. If we decide to go ahead, we'll target specific files and have a look at the documents of those files. And if a mistake was made or it's a straightforward refund, we'll just process the refund into your bank account. With some product, we need to go to customs and ask for tariff advices. Tariff advice, it's like tax ruling. So we actually ask customs, or ABF as it's called today, Australian Border Force, for their approval for us to classify the goods under certain classification or apply also a TCO for those goods. And that's give us the assurance that there is no exposure whatsoever. So if the product is not a clear-cut match with the TCO, we usually go with that, and sometimes with classification. I'll talk about classification shortly when we cover TCO. So we go through this process and we process all the refund to your bank account. And at the end of that process, you get a full report that you need to forward to your custom broker and say, you missed all those things in the past. Please make sure don't do it again. And you get also the tariff advices that we obtain from customs. You also need to provide those to your customs broker. So he need to follow those tariff advices moving forward. We also will come with the list of items that you imported and duty was applicable and there was nothing to do about them at that stage. And those will be product that will recommend to go for tariff concession order to remove the duty into the future if you keep importing those products into the future. Just a few examples from different industries why, some test case that we have or real cases that we had in the past with clients. For example, this importer brought a thermos and a lunchbox. The lunchbox is dutiable and the thermos is duty free. And obviously, when the customs broker classified those goods, he classified to the lunchbox. There is a way for interpretation of classification, and it says that if two goods have the same value, you classify to the last occurring goods in the book, which is the thermos. So we apply for tariff advice with customs, and they agree with us that it should be classified to the thermos, and the set came together as duty-free, and we process refunds for the client. I'll give you another example about negatoscope, and you might ask yourself, what is negatoscope? So this is the product that, this is actually, if you've been to an emergency in hospital, they have those light panels on the wall. They put the X-ray, which I don't know if it exists anymore. They're just using screens, but it used to be in an emergency department, and that's a negatoscope. But this was imported for kids to play with. And the custom broker classified those products to different headings, to toy, to lamp, and different areas. And we went to customs and applied for a tariff advice and said, we actually believe it should be classified as negatoscope. It came back and they said, no, it's a lamp. So we appealed, and through an appeal process, they agree with us and classify the goods as negatoscope, which is duty-free. And this is actually something that went almost all the way to back then it was the AAT, now it's called the ART. And it was a big question of ferries are human. And just to simplify that, back then, non-human creature were duty-free and human creature, I'm talking about those, were dutiable. So we argued that ferries are non-human. So we applied for tariff advice and customs came back and say, no, they're human. So we appeal and they came back and say they're human. So we appeal to the court and eventually the whole thing settled because customs realized that humans do not have wings. And then they classify as non-human creature. But they did went into the detail that says if the doll wearing the wings with rubber bands, it's actually human dress up as a fairy. So it is a human. So we settled on that. Now, another part of and I discuss about the compliance audit. I'm not going to spend time on that. If anyone is interested in compliance audit, get in touch with us and we'll further discuss that. but I really want to talk about TCO, Tariff Concession Orders, now.
All right, so yeah, that's right. We're going to be talking now about duty planning and tariff concession orders, which are orders that reduce costs to the public by allowing a duty-free entry for certain goods where there was no local industry that produced these goods.
So, this is an example from the mining industry, nickel mining. A client contacted us and wanted to import, was looking to import this machine, and he requested us to apply for tariff concession order. It's a slurry solid liquid separation machine, and we'll look at that. And the first thing you need to do before you apply for TCO, tariff concession order, and that's to remove the duty for goods coming in. You need to classify the goods. And that's the big thing. And you look at that machine, I'll go back, and you think, what is actually machine doing? Is it a filter? Is it a processing machine? And classification is a very big thing. And everyone knows the story about tomatoes or tomatoes. It's a US case that customs in the US, the Supreme Court in the US decide that tomatoes are a vegetable and not fruit, although they're fruit. So not everything is that straightforward with customs when you look at a product. And when you look at this product, it actually can fall under at least two different classifications. So you go the 8474 machinery for sorting, screening, and it's really for mineral processing and so on, or a straightforward filter. And try to think, where would you classify that machine? And the problem is, if you get the classification wrong and custom awarded you the TCO, the tariff concession order, on the wrong classification, and you import the machine at entry, customs could say, you got the TCO in the wrong classification, you're actually not eligible for that and you need to pay the duty. So getting the classification right is very, very important. And we actually going through tariff advice when we apply for, especially machinery. Machinery is quite complex. So it's better to get in touch with us when you place the purchase order and not when the goods are already here or you already paid the duty or 2 weeks before the ship arrived. Really, when you place the PO, the purchase order with your supplier of the goods, get in touch with us and tell us what's the configuration going to be. And it's important if you bring it with auxiliary machinery, if it's coming with compressor or cooling system, cooling room, and different machines, production line come in different configuration. And it's very important to get the classification right. So when we look at tariff concession process, first we classify the good and we try to obtain a tariff advice if we got enough time for that. But when we look at the classification, we also search existing TCO. So this client contact us and say, can you apply for a TCO? But instead of going through this much longer and more expensive process, we said to him, let's classify the good and see if there is already existing TCO in place. And we did find one that we thought described exactly what the machine does. So we applied for tariff advice, claiming it is a filter. By the way, it was agreed it was a filter and not mineral processing machine. And customs agree with us that the TCO that was already exist in place applicable for those goods. And why it's important, because if you look at existing TCO, I'll give you two examples. You see those two TCOs, and that's the first one that was applied for, and then someone applied for something almost exactly the same. Now, the first one is actually more inclusive than the second one, and the wording of a TCO are very, very important. So this TCO will actually will exclude anything that worked under that pressure, the 10,000 kPa, when this one is more inclusive. So in this case, someone got sold a TCO he didn't need to get. So first, very important to check if there are existing TCO that will be applicable for the goods and go through tariff advice to cement that with custom. Let's say we apply for tariff advice and there is no existing TCO, then we go through the TCO process. And important stage is the wording. We need to get the wording right. We need to contact local manufacturers and see that nobody manufactured those goods in Australia. We need to prepare the application, submit it to customs, manage the communication with customs during the application process, and manage any additional information required. And there is with machinery because they are so complex. When you process the refund, if the TCO get awarded, you might be able to process a refund, and I'll explain it shortly, but all future importation will be duty-free from then on. This is the timeline of a TCO, and we receive the data from you as the client. We assess the data, classify it, and apply for tariff advice. And normal time for tariff advice is 30 days, and that's to cement the classification. Now it's taking about 90 days. The government is busy, but hopefully it will go back to 30 days. Then we do industry, after we get the classification and we run industry search, we contact association, and then we lodge the TCO. And that's become very important date. After we lodge, customs got 28 days to review the application, and if everything good is okay, they will gazette it. As soon as they gazette it, it's open for the public to object. Usually after 50 days, they will make the TCO. The TCO will be made. It could be longer, but the standard is 50 days. So we're talking here about 80 days from lodgement. Now, if you import the machine or the goods during that period after the lodgement date, you can actually go back for a refund and get the money back from customs if the goods fit the TCO, the tariff concession description. So that timeline is very important, and as we have a longer lead time, it will secure the TCO and it will provide you more assurance that you can get the benefit of that. There are a few other tools that I'm not going to dive into today, TradeX and duty drawbacks, and they deal with importation of goods and re-exportation of those goods, or if you bring raw materials, you incorporate them into goods manufactured in Australia and re-export. There are other programs that you can get the duty paid after exportation.
Great, thanks so much, Boaz. So our first step is the high-level duty review, and that's where we get the snapshot to understand the last 4 years of your duty. We've reduced our standard engagement costs for OSMI members to $165, down from $550. And that includes your high-level duty review that we will present to you, as well as your report and future recommendations as well. So the next step, if you decide that this is something that you would like us to look at, then you'll provide an authorization letter to access your data, which we have a template, a very specific template for the Australian Border Force to compliantly access your data. And then once we've presented your data and the report, we make a decision together whether or not you want to move forward and actually do the full audit as we've just been through. And we work on success when we do that. So your success is our success, and you actually only pay once we uncover savings for your business. Now, we're going to move now to questions, but before we do, I just wanted to flick through some testimonials and some client feedback. You can actually go and have a look on our website and have a look at some of the people that we've worked with, also to some of the testimonials that we have from our clients. Here are some clients that we're currently working with and have worked with as well in the past. And that brings us to the end of our formal presentation. I'm going to hand back over to Sam now, and he is going to moderate any questions that anyone might have. Over to you, Sam.
Thank you so much. Thank you both, Trilby and Boaz, for that really comprehensive and insightful review of the TCO requirements. It is time for questions, and I will just run through. I've had a couple sent through from some people that can't be here live, but they wanted to get their responses. So just bear with me. So question number one for either of you, I guess, is what qualifies a product for a TCO, and where do applications usually fail?
For a product to be successful in TCO, so the product should not be manufactured in Australia. And some misconception around that is quality. So when the Australian Border Force look at the application, they will not look at areas of quality of the product. If the product made in Australia can function and or I would say the other way around, if the product that you're about to import is overlapping with the functionality of product that made in Australia, usually the application will not go through. And that's usually when application fail, that there is a local manufacturer, and the idea is to protect the local manufacturers and not allow duty-free for those goods made here locally.
Thank you. Next question is, what are the most common errors found in import file audits?
I think the most common is misclassification of goods, and that's because the custom broker didn't have sufficient information or assumptions were made, and sometimes the pressure of clearing goods, we just need the goods straight away, so there is a lot of pressure in the system to move everything quickly, and there is the whole system working under pressure, and people misclassify goods. And when you misclassify goods, there is a effect that goes into, if you didn't classify the goods correctly, you won't find the right tariff concession for those goods, because the link between TCO and classification is 1-for-1. You can apply TCO from a different classification to your goods if you misclassify. Also, free trade agreement are some of them are related to classification. So some headings or classification are duty-free, some are not. If the goods were classified to headings that are dutiable, you won't get the benefits of the free trade agreement. So classification is key, and that's where most of the mistakes happens.
Thank you. The next question, I think you've already answered how long does the TCO take? But the second part of the question is, can we recover duty paid before approval?
No. The answer is no. Only when the TCO is made, only then you can recover the duty. But to prevent that, planning is key. And we just had the client that the duty bill was $500,000 for their importation, and they contact us probably 1.5 months before the goods were landed in Australia. It was a very complex project, and we took a bit because we didn't have sufficient time, we were working it very, under pressure, and lucky everything went smoothly, because sometimes application can get rejected, but everything went smoothly. They paid the duty, they did pay the $500,000 duty, and when the TCO was made later on, they went back and claimed a refund.
Thank you, Boaz. Next question is, how do you decide if goods should be classified as full production line versus separate components?
That's a very good question, and it's case by case. So if someone got a specific case, I'm happy to take it offline and look at that. And it depends on so many, ruling and component and what are the components, and it's quite complex. Machinery is the most complicated area of classification. So it's all case by case basis.
Thank you very much. I don't have any more questions up on my screen, but if you have thought of something after we finish the webinar, please send it through to us and we will get it to the Nexus Point team for a response. I'd like to give a big thank you to Boaz and Truby for your time today. Your insights are appreciated as always. Just a reminder, we have recorded the presentation today and we'll send you all a link to access the video through the Osmine YouTube channel. Thank you to everyone who's attended, and we look forward to welcoming you to the next Osmine webinar.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Sam. Thanks, everyone.